Welcome to Variety Intelligence Platform's webinar, VIP Exchange, Making Addressable Accessible, presented by ViacomCBS. In the quickly evolving media landscape, brands and marketers have been laser focused on reaching relevant audiences to drive efficiency and accuracy with advertisements. With the advancement of tech, addressable advertising is being widely viewed as a future of media advertising. I'm Heidi Chung, media analyst and correspondent for Variety Intelligence Platform, and I'm so excited to be joined by ViacomCBS Executive Vice President of Advanced Media, Julian Zilberbrand. We're going to dive deep into the future of addressable advertising and how it will become an even more important aspect of advanced marketing going forward. Julian, we're so excited to have you here with us. I want to just dive in right away. Let's talk about the big picture here first. So for those that aren't necessarily familiar with addressable advertising, can you break it down exactly what it is and what the value is as well?
Sure. First off, let me say thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here today, and I'm glad to be talking to you. And so let me answer the first question. Very simply, and I actually said this in a different forum not too long ago. Addressable is about the right message to the right audience at the right time in premium content and in the TV experience that the consumer prefers. And I think that's the key factor here, especially in the new age that we're in, is that it's about television, but television now is a very broad term and encompasses different kind of consumption experiences, but addressable applies to all of it.
Okay, so there are so many different ways that people are consuming media these days, platforms, methods, you name it. You've been at ViacomCBS for about, 6-7 years at this point, since 2015. And the company has been an early adopter of addressable. In December 2020, like you mentioned, CBS has become the first broadcast network to deliver addressable impressions to a live national broadcast. I want to know how the strategy at ViacomCBS has sort of evolved over the years. Addressable has been around for a while at this point. So how has it changed at ViacomCBS?
Sure. So when we began to enable addressability several years ago, we knew this would be a multi-year process to get to scale and to have a real story to tell. What we discovered very quickly was that the market was still lacking the education needed to leverage some of these capabilities at scale, and that investment in creative, to me, something that's still missing, frankly, wasn't really in place. Additionally, we had to mature our own approach as to how we use this inventory in conjunction with other data-driven tactics, like data-driven linear as an example. So over the course of time, as both the market got further educated and as we evolved our capabilities and our partner relationships to help better present the story of incrementality and extended reach using addressable, we were able to expand our ability to enable advertisers to have a more comprehensive understanding of how this inventory pool impacted reach and frequency. Now, with much of this in place and the merger behind us, we got to working on enablement in broadcast in conjunction with our partners at OR. And we see that as another avenue to give our clients access to an audience in a manner that would allow them to drive a better conversation with the consumer. But that's just the beginning of the process, right? So, enablement in one, new distribution environment is important, but there's a lot of work to be done in addressability as we move forward. And I'm sure we'll get to this with some other questions. So I don't want to, overstate everything and cut off all the potential questions, but there's definitely avenues that we continue to evolve in. The broadcast piece, which I think is amazing and a great accomplishment, and has set standards for others to kind of, do the same thing. But that's just the beginning, right? And there's a lot more that we have to do to mature this marketplace.
So Julian, I feel like ViacomCBS is doing its part in, raising awareness, making sure marketers and brands out there understand exactly what the future in advertising is with addressable. But I'm wondering, how has the reception sort of been as we've evolved in this space? Have they been more open to adopting this new strategy of advertisements?
Look, I think they have. I think what you'd find, and my background is I spent quite some time at an agency and in the buying community, so I have a very real appreciation for the challenges that side of the house faces, and I think that where things have evolved is buyers are absolutely more invested in this kind of opportunity, because I think with fragmentation of consumption leads to a need to have a more comprehensive conversation with consumers, and addressable is another environment with which they can do so. I think the challenges that the medium faces, and this is not necessarily specific to ViacomCBS, but I think addressable as a whole, and then to some degree relation to ViacomCBS is, buying it is complex and it's fractured. Reporting on it is complex and it's fractured. What we have done is certainly, enable one singular environment that provides, a view across our own footprint, which we think is, pretty revolutionary, frankly. But at the same time, that's a small piece of the entire puzzle. And buyers need to have an improved way for measurement, which is absolutely something that we need to kind of work on, not just again as ViacomCBS, but as an industry. And we need to enable a much easier buying environment, right? Now, does that mean it becomes programmatic in some form? I believe it does. It doesn't necessarily mean it's RTB. I think that's not realistic, obviously, from a supply scenario. But I do think that, creating an easier way for buyers to procure the inventory, and a operationalized process that makes it easier for the entire kind of flow of the business to work. I think that will help really move the needle on making this much more aggressive as a tactic. And really, we need to kind of get to that point, but we are admittedly, quite a while from that. But it's one of the things I know that I'm trying to push for, and things that I've talked about with my peers in the space is the fact that these two factors, the measurement factor and the easy buying factor, are things we have to work on enablement.
So you brought up a couple words that sort of buzzed at me. They triggered me a little bit. You said there are challenges. It's fragmented. It's complicated. There are some issues when it comes to inventory. We want to make it an easy buying experience. Can you explain what you mean exactly by that? What are these real challenges that I guess we need to overcome before buyers are much more comfortable adopting this?
Well, first and foremost, I think measurement. There's a lot of work to be done on the measurement side of the equation when it comes to addressable. If you are buying addressable from a single distributor, because really that's where this manifests itself from to some extent, right? It starts at the distributors. You can get what you need to get from that distributor, but if you are a buyer, you're buying across multiple environments. If everybody's giving you separate level reports at different time intervals and different bits of information with different levels of information, you're kind of buying digital in 1999. Like that's the equation I'll make. Like when I worked at DoubleClick back in the days, like that was the talking point, that you brought everything together and you got all your information in one place. That's something that's yet to exist from an addressable factor. It can be done in some ways, and there are certainly companies and different kind of organizations that can kind of foster that for you, but they in turn still have to go individually and gather that and compile it, so to speak. So there's that challenge that exists. When I talked about inventory, I just meant, listen, linear is a constraint supply, and in general, TV is a constraint supply environment, which is why it's incredibly valuable. So the concept of this being RTB is not a real kind of opportunity. But I think, creating a programmatic approach where you can have a buyer go into a singular platform and procure inventory from a ViacomCBS in an easy, simple manner, I think that's one of the things that's missing, along with the measurement, right? So it's really, right now, it's, you could work with us today, obviously, and do what you need to do in terms of buying addressability. But I think as a buyer, realistically, you want to have a larger scale view of addressable. And I want to be sensitive to the fact that we are certainly promoting ViacomCBS and what we're capable of doing. And I think what we've done is unique in the market and stands out, and I think is really revolutionary. At the same time, I'm not naive to the realities of the marketplace, and the marketplace demands that things become easier. Things are much more accountable from a reporting standpoint. And those two factors are the main factors that will drive further adoption for this kind of capability.
So Julian, you mentioned reporting holistically. Like, how does that play into all of this? How is that a relevant conversation that a lot of folks out there should be having?
Yeah, look, reporting is one of the biggest challenges in the marketplace, as we talked about. And so what we've done, as an example, and you could see my background, we've developed a product called InView. InView is Viacom's first foray into a reporting, analytics, and insight platform. Look, we realize we are one of many partners that anybody works with. What we aim to do is to make it very easy to work with us, right? We want to make sure that when you buy with ViacomCBS, you have a singular environment with which all your investment information is available to you. So not only are you going to see if you're buying linear and seeing reporting and pacing and things of that nature, but if you're buying digital, you'll see some digital metrics there. If you're buying experiential, we want to build some of that in there. We are in the beginning stages of this product. We have just released it out into the market, and we're still kind of bringing it to clients. So you are amongst the very first to hear about this. And we are very much in the infancy stage of this product, but we hope that it will create a singular environment where a client can come in and get all their information with the investment they make with ViacomCBS. That will be inclusive of, reporting and analytics, which are a kind of stock, if you will. But we also want to provide deeper level of insight. How can we help you understand how creative is working, right? And we partner with some companies on that front. How can we, give you more information from an audience insights capability? And that's something we're looking to develop. So ultimately, what we're just trying to do is create an opportunity for clients to have an easy experience working with ViacomCBS.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about that buyer sentiment, because ViacomCBS, along with a bunch of other companies, put together a report with Forrester Consulting Group, which was released earlier this year. And it found that nearly 60% of the marketers surveyed said that addressable would be a part of their media mix this year in 2021. And those same marketers viewed addressable as an opportunity to achieve their key media objectives as well. Now, what does that exactly mean? I mean, it was an extensive report, so we obviously can't dig into all the details, but what was the most surprising to you? What was not surprising? What were some key takeaways there?
Well, the percentage doesn't really surprise me. Maybe it's a tad too low than what it should be, but addressable isn't a tactic for every possible brand, right? Like if you are selling paper towels, maybe you don't have to have an immediate conversation in a specific locale with a specific consumer versus if you're trying to sell an auto or if you're doing QSR or things of that nature. So that the number didn't necessarily surprise me. I think that there's beyond ViacomCBS, where we have made it easier to buy across multiple distributors on our footprint, the whole addressable environment, as we talked about, is still complicated and fractured, right? And those are still barriers to business that the market needs to address. And, when you talk about addressable, you don't think of it in one party. So you're not thinking of it just as ViacomCBS or just as, distributor X, Y, or Z. You think of it holistically. And I imagine, when people are filling out, survey, that's kind of where that comes from. I think, there are other things that have to happen to really make addressable, more useful for buyers. And that is, innovation in the creative side of the business. Creative is quite expensive. And clients obviously pay a significant amount to develop a 30-second spot. But you can't use the 30-second spot you've developed, hypothetically speaking, for a national audience in tactical addressable use cases. You can, obviously, let me check myself. You can do that. I just don't think that's necessarily always the best tactic, right? So, I mean, again, it depends on what your creative is, but I think the key is that creative is still a challenge, and having the right creative is a challenge in the addressable marketplace. So there has to be further innovation when it comes to creative, right? And we have to, make it easier for advertisers and frankly, cheaper, easier, cheaper, can kind of overlap them, if you will, but you have to make it more effective and easier for advertisers to have different versions of their creatives, right? So what does that mean? Do they shoot, more B-roll and cut it up? And do they have to have a tactical approach to the way that they shoot their spots? Is there technology that's available that allows you to kind of take a bunch of video and then cut it up and slice it in ways that can be used in a more tactical / targeted manner, right? Like those are the things that I think are needed for the marketplace to start to mature even further. 60% is a great number. Maybe it's not 100%, but it should be 95%, right? And so, but the factors that we're talking about and the challenges that we're talking about are real, right? And we are one of many that offer out this capability. And while we have enabled, a singular solution, the marketplace is still dealing with the challenges around that. And, one player as big as we are, and I think as relevant as we are, can't solve the problems for the entire market. So, this is my attempt to kind of say, hey, look, these are the things that, this specific capability still needs to evolve in, that is reporting and that is, buying, but creative. How do we make the clients have a better experience on the creative side? And where's the innovation on that front? When you look at technology and tech companies, most of them are focused on servicing the media end of the equation. It's typically where the money is going to come from and where the payments are going to come from. But we need to start thinking about what are we doing to support the creative side of the business so that it can impact the media side of the business in a way that maybe it hasn't in the past.
Okay, so you mentioned expensive. Addressable ads have been known to be quite on the expensive side. So is that still a concern that's out there? Is that still a bear case?
If we're talking about like the cost of a CPM, I don't know that that's the issue. But, if I bought, 100 ads and it reached 10%, 10% reached the audience that it's meant to reach, I'm still paying $100 CPM one way or the other, right? Right? It's the same. It's effective, right? It's, any buyer does effective CPM, right? Like, you pay $100, you pay $10, but technically you're only getting, $10 worth of it versus $100 worth of what you anticipate. So look, I think that, the cost is a factor, but I don't really believe that's the major kind of boundary at this point. I think it's all the other things that we've already talked about that are really the boundaries. I think the way that things can be packaged today, I think the way that we can kind of tactically provide support and use this kind of inventory with other opportunities like data-driven linear or, addressable in VOD or mix in, CTV and other environments, you could find ways to make things cost-effective if you're a buyer. I don't think that's the concern. It's all these other factors, the creative issue that we talked about, the making it buy easy issue. And I think most importantly, the reporting factor. Like that's the factor that we all need as an industry to work further towards.
I feel like we can do a whole nother webinar on measurement. I don't want to ruin any surprises in case we do end up doing that. But I understand that measurement is, of course, such a big part of this. And another really big bull case that, the market likes to allude to is the fact that there's incredible return on investment, ROI, when it comes to addressable advertising, right? And that it could be measured. So you can follow the consumer through the entirety of that consumer lifestyle, meaning it provides marketers with data from discovery and engagement to purchase, to post-purchase, and even beyond that. So I guess with that being said, what is the next phase in addition to that? When you have that kind of valuable information, how can that be used? What's the next phase of growth there?
Sure. Look, Addressable is an incredibly powerful capability and platform, but as I mentioned, it's available in a lot of different places. And when we think about individual measurement criteria on a full total investment, so if I'm buying in 5 places, I'm going to get 5 different reports with 5 different bits of information. That's not only a lot to put together, but there are going to be potentially different bits of information that provide different insights or not, and otherwise. And I think that's challenging. So what we've done obviously is work to have distributor relationships that are mutually beneficial, that allow us to kind of do a lot of different things with our partners, and Addressable being one of them. But measurement along multiple things still needs more levels of maturity. So all the things you laid out are true, but there's more that has to come, right? There's attributable reporting that has to be in place. There's reach and frequency, which is really what the buying community buys against, right? That has to be, scaled up, right? Now, if you're buying against 5 different distributors, it's 5 different reach environments. But as things kind of move to, different and new platforms at the glass, as an example, right? Those are new environments with new potential reporting parameters and all these kind of scenarios. So, it helps to have a ViacomCBS to aggregate all of that into one. But like I said, we are one of many players. And so the marketplace has to adjust holistically to having more capabilities on this front. And frankly, even on our end, we need more investment in measurement, more investment in the opportunities to kind of understand how some of these things are working, so we could build further stories that help kind of drive and educate the consumer base. What we find, or what I found personally, is that from an education perspective, there's still a lack of education on addressability and the addressable market at scale. There's a group of individuals in this marketplace, 150 people, who really know what they're doing, but the marketplace is thousands of people and thousands of investors. And most of them are not necessarily educated that you can use data on television. I mean, you'll be surprised at the lack of knowing that you could actually use data in a TV environment, right? Like that, we discovered that several years ago, and we made it our purpose and one of our efforts to kind of further that education, as you mentioned. But I keep saying this and I feel redundant saying it, but we are one of many, and we can't be the only ones educating the market. So this is why you have a Go Addressable initiative, or this is why you have a Project or this is why you have all these other kind of things that are coming together to help educate the market. But there's a lot to be done there, and there's a lot to understand. And then people using data as currency to buy television, that's also new, right? To a degree, right? It's not new in the sense that it hasn't been around. It's new as it's begun to scale new. And so as that starts to mature, more people understand what can be done, how things can work, how to activate in this environment, because by the way, activation in this environment is not necessarily a simple 1, 2, 3 step process, right? There's some process to activate in the addressable world. And certainly there are investments being made holistically in the industry. We have a JV with a couple of our partners in Blockgraph, in a company that allows for that kind of exchange to happen at a much faster pace. And that product certainly will scale over the course of time. But holistically in the marketplace, we need to improve kind of time to market. That's part of the kind of challenge with the addressable is time to market. And then along with time to market and all this other stuff is, then wrapping that all up with reporting that's also potentially available at a faster pace. Because at any level, if you're getting reporting multiple months after, you have a different opportunity that you can leverage that information on than if you're getting that report maybe a little bit faster, right? So all things are speed related, data related, information related, but they are about enablement further in that space and enablement of the speed to market.
So addressable TV has been around for a long time. I mentioned that before. And technology has just come such a long way, right? I feel like it's so fast, I can't even keep up with it. So how does addressable TV keep up with it if you're saying we're still pretty immature in the entire, or the marketplace is not fully accepting this, it's not mature really, we still have a long way to go, then what's going to happen if addressable TV and the technology just they're not moving in parallel anymore, they're not in tandem? We got to get people on board, right?
Well, the lucky thing is we are in tandem, we are working together, we are talking about it. These aren't conversations that happen in a vacuum just between you and I. Luckily, myself, along with, I'm sure, my peers at other programmers and the distributors, we're all, and the buying side, right? We're all, in, what's the best word I could use? We're all in sync, right? When it comes to the fact that this is an important feature, an important functionality, an important capability that presents immediate value. And when I say not mature, I simply mean that we are, let's say, in inning 4 of a 9-inning game, right? There's more to do. And so, when I think about what are the things that we need to do first, well, we talked about it, right? We talked about speed to market and speeding up the process of just executing the buy. We talked about getting information in a faster manner. We talked about, enabling the buying process to speed up, all these other things. That's the maturity that the industry needs to have happen. The lucky thing is, I think the beautiful thing is that, the industry is in tune to address this. And the conversations are going on actively now to consistently and continually work to move this capability forward. There's a real emphasis on that today and in the future. And so as we kind of think about where the marketplace is going, if everybody's swimming in the same lane, so to speak, then we're going to get to, I don't want to say inning 9 because that's the end of the game, right? But we're going to get to inning 7, inning 6, where we have an opportunity to really do things a lot more strategically with our customers and with our partners, holistically, that benefits ultimately the marketplace and the clients, and frankly, the consumers, right? Like as a consumer, right? Because we're both consumers, we both work in this industry. I like to see advertising that's relevant to me. And I think that's important. And I think if you ask consumers, most of the time, they'll give you that same answer. So, especially when it comes to getting content, for free. So, when we talk about that experience, we do have to kind of think about, the benefits across the board. And because there are benefits across the board, everybody in the marketplace is trying to swim in the same direction to get us to a place where we're just in a better place, in a better environment. Not that we're in a bad place now. I don't want to misconstrue that. We're in a great place now. We are doing a tremendous amount of business on this front. We have great relationships with our clients who are investing here, but there's just more work to do. I don't think we ever should be complacent. with where we are. I think there's room to grow, there's room to mature, and there's room to improve. And I think, I apply that motto to everything in life. So why not here?
No, I mean, as a consumer, of course, I love receiving advertisements that are relevant to me. Now, I don't know if my wallet feels the same way, but it is certainly a lot better of an experience. So I will say that. I feel like we've covered so much ground. There's so much info for me to digest, and I'm sure our viewers as well. But is there anything else that I'm missing that you do want to talk about, you want to add onto this conversation, Julian?
No, there's nothing specific that I think we missed. I think we covered a great deal, and you're an amazing interviewer, obviously. But I think really, what I would want to kind of leave with is, this opportunity exists today. It certainly exists with ViacomCBS, and we are excited to work with our partners and our clients on, working towards not only doing more of this kind of business and scaling it, but really working to understand what their needs are, right? So how do we get that 60% to 95%, right? And what are the things, and let's have an open communication about what are the things that we need. And, the things that I brought up are the things that I've heard when I've talked to advertisers, or when I've heard other, advertisers and buyers talk in the marketplace. But I'm sure that there are other things that, we should discuss, right? So, it's an open invitation. So I'm making this an open invitation to anybody to talk about, addressability and how do we improve and better where we are. Because like I said, I think we're in a good place now, but there's always room to grow.
Always room to grow. My sincerest thanks, Julian Zilberbrand, ViacomCBS's Executive Vice President of Advanced Media. It was such an informative conversation. You're the best. We really hope to have you back. I want to thank our viewers as well who tuned in today. Please join us next time for another fun VIP webinar. Take care.